Previously on Average Dom Slim.
I'm Average Dom Slim, let's go.
Well, this is not how I want to start episode 10.
It was rough.
Even the effort of coming to the gym is getting easier.
I literally am going to have to learn how to run again.
Hi guys, I'm Average Dom Slim, and having a stress fracture sucks. It's not as bad as, say, war, or as painful as, say, childbirth, probably, and it's not as annoying as that neighbour who mows the lawn at 6 a.m. on your rest day. But it still sucks. I'm currently 10 weeks without running, and I do not want the same for you. So I've done a lot of research and talked to a lot of smart people. And today I'm going to go into some of the leading theories as to what may have caused my navicular stress fracture in my right foot. And importantly, I'm going to make some recommendations to you guys as to what to do to avoid getting into the same situation. So I'll take you through 5 possible causes, the science that sits behind them, my analysis, how it applies to my case, and how likely it is that it caused my stress fracture, and recommendations. These apply to me as much as they do to you. And these recommendations are probably going to help you avoid other stress fractures and other running injuries in general. Please remember, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a physio, I'm not a sports scientist or a nutritionist or a marine biologist, I'm just an average Dom Slim. What is a stress fracture? Great question. They are relatively common overuse injuries commonly found in runners. They're caused by repetitive loading on a bone over time. Most commonly, they occur in the lower extremities. And in my case, this is the navicular bone in my right foot. I also happen to have a stress reaction in the talus bone, which is the next door neighbor of the navicular. Now, one of the key elements is repetitive loading compounded with inadequate time for rest and recovery. We'll get into that a little bit later. Now let me start by acknowledging that there are a huge list of possible risk factors for bone stress injuries. Training patterns, biomechanics, equipment, environment, medical history, energy availability, even stress, head stress, foot stress, you know what I mean? In this video, we're going to focus on 5 that I believe are most relevant in my case and most actionable in your case. Possible cause number 1, low vitamin D. As you can see here in the science, there's a fairly complex, albeit direct chain between low vitamin D and more susceptible bones. Now you can of course consume dietary vitamin D, but the main source of vitamin D is from sunlight. Now many of us across the world live without a lot of sunlight for a fairly significant portion of the year, while others of us have only ever seen the sun for a few seconds at a time, if at all. For those of us though who live in ever sunny climates, we think that this doesn't apply to us. However, in the winter, when it's sunny but cold, we may wrap up our bodies and protect ourselves from the sunlight, but also block that vitamin D. My instinct for myself was, living on the Gold Coast, this is probably not going to apply to me. But just to check, I got a blood test. And the results, good levels of vitamin D. So the likelihood for this one, least likely. My recommendation, however, is go get a blood test and check for yourself. This is particularly important when you change your training, perhaps you're starting a marathon training block. A blood test will allow you to check on your vitamin D, your iron, your B12. These levels are great for me as well, which I'm quite proud of as a vegetarian. And several other important vitamins, proteins, hormones, all sorts of things. If you are low in vitamin D, you can take supplements. Possible cause number 2 is load, simply running too much. Now, building your volume too quickly without adequate time for rest and recovery can put you at risk of a stress fracture. In October 2023, I was running about 60 kilometers a week. By December, this was 90, January through April, this was about 100. And it wasn't until May, June that I built this up to 120 kilometers per week. This, my friends, is a slow build. This, my friends, is a build that I would recommend to my family and friends and frenemies. Now, the general rule of thumb is to increase your load by no more than 10% week on week. So to give you an example of that, you could build from 60 kilometers to 80 kilometers over about 3 or 4 weeks. I built from 60 kilometers to 120 kilometers over 9 months. Plenty of time and nothing dangerous or risky there. So the likelihood for this one is not very likely. But please let me be clear that stress fractures and volume are directly related. So you need to be conscious of your build. Build slowly, use the 10% as a rule, and take deload weeks as needed. Possible cause number 3, gait mechanics and shoes. Yeah, I'm lumping these guys together. Now, when I say gait mechanics, I'm not talking about old mate Jeff who comes to fix your fence when it gets stuck. I'm talking about your running pattern. As you can see, wearing old shoes or shoes that are wrong for your feet can expose you to a risk of stress fracture. And good shoes can reduce this risk. Now, a few things to note in my case, a few admissions. This was my shoe rotation for most of 2024, including my marathon block. Asics Nova Blast, Asics Metaspeed Sky Plus, Asics Metaspeed Sky Paris, and Nike Trail Pegasus. Yes, I love Asics shoes. No, I'm not sponsored. Yet. And now this is how they look after probably way too many kilometers. Nextly, it's important to note that I did pick up during that marathon training block something in the old Achilles on that same side.
Bit of something going on with my Achilles on my right side.
And possibly having this for a few weeks, it may have affected my gait. To add to that, as I mentioned in my Metaspeed Paris review, the second thing for me is the high arch. Just personally, it doesn't feel as great. The unwanted arch support in these shoes may also have affected my gait. Likelihood, it is possible that this was a contributor to my stress fracture. Now, it's always worth having your gait analyzed in a running shop or the running shop if you're on the coast. And this is not just when you start running. Over time, your form can actually change, so it's worth revisiting this. When I'm able to jog even a few minutes on a treadmill, I'm gonna get this done for myself. And I'm gonna make sure I'm in the right shoes according to my gait. Currently, this is my new shoe rotation with still some work to do. Asics Nimbus, New Balance 1080s, and these two, they gotta be replaced. So my other recommendation is looking closely at your shoe rotation. And if you're running a lot, make sure you have more than one daily jogger. I'm saying that to you guys as much as I'm saying it to myself. Possible cause number 4, nutrition, not eating enough calories. Several studies have identified a link between stress fractures and insufficient caloric intake. Not enough energy can cause impaired bone health, and higher intakes of certain bone strengthening foods are associated with a lower stress fracture rate. Many of you already see what I eat. And if you'd like to see what I eat, go watch Here's Everything I Eat Training for a 2:39 Marathon, or I Ate the Kenyan Runner's Diet for a week, or What I Eat in a Day as a 250 marathoner, or I tried intermittent fasting for a week. As you'll see, I eat very well, including in the areas that they suggest lead to bone strength: calcium, skim milk, dairy food, potassium, and my blood tests show that I eat enough iron and B12. But, admittedly, I may not consume enough calories when I'm in peak training. And I say this because my caloric intake is very similar when I'm not training, i.e. right now, as to when I'm running 100 or 120 kilometers per week. So right now, I eat 3 meals a day and probably a snack. When I'm training a lot, I probably only add a pre-run snack and maybe another snack during the day. It's not huge, and it's probably not proportionate to how much I'm training. Likelihood, it is possible that this is a contributor. My recommendation, first and foremost, eat well, in general and specifically around your training. For example, fueling on carbs and replenishing on protein. Also, ensure you're eating enough calories relative to your training. So once I start running again, I'm going to work with a nutritionist on my eating plan. Trial eating more, see how my stomach handles it, and make a plan accordingly. And possible cause number 5, intensity. Too fast, too furious. There is a simple and direct link between stress injuries and intensity of training. Now, we've already explored increase in training load, and for me it seemed okay, but what that doesn't show is the increase in training intensity wrapped up in that load. And what do I mean intensity? This is the difference between easy and recovery runs, which is low intensity, and speed, interval, tempo, threshold sessions, high intensity. So in the same period that I touched on before, from October 2023 to June 2024, I started doing multiple sessions per week. On Tuesdays, this was interval sessions, which started on a grass track, but when that track closed for refurbishments, this became a weekly session on concrete. On Thursdays, I would do threshold sessions. On Saturdays, I mostly did fast park runs. And on Sundays, my long runs got faster and faster as they got longer and longer, from about 5:15 per kilometers to 4:30 per kilometer. Now each week, that's a lot of intensity. And at the same time, my recovery periods are getting smaller and smaller. I was running 5 days, then 6, then 7. I was even doubling on 2 days. Now I know that speaks more to load, but when you're doing intense sessions on a Tuesday and Thursday, and then you're running a double on a Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, there's not much time for your body to recover. So as I said, after a lot of research and many conversations, this is probably the leading factor as to the cause of my stress fracture. However, even at this stage, there is not 100% certainty. And it is very possible that load, shoes, and nutrition also played a role. My recommendation on this is be mindful of the intensity that you're doing each week. For beginner runners, just focus on 1 fast session per week. For intermediate runners, maybe 2. And keep the rest of your running really easy. Also consider running on less hard terrain, like gravel, grass, sand. Take rest days, probably every week, and take deload weeks. When I start running again, it'll be only easy running for quite a while. And then I'll introduce 1 fast session on the grass track. It is now open again. I'm also going to mix up the terrains that I run on, and I'm going to keep cross training. I also plan to take a full month off running per year. We'll see if I stick to that. I hope for my sake and yours that we follow some of the recommendations that I gave in this video, so that we collectively avoid any future stresses. Now here they are again. Get a blood test to monitor vitamin D and other levels. Build your training load slowly. Get your gait tested for the right shoes. Have a solid shoe rotation. Replace shoes when necessary. Refuel well. Eat healthy, including in calcium, carbs, and protein. Eat enough relative to your training. Build your intensity slowly. Limit your weekly intensity. Take deload weeks. Take adequate rest days. If you have a question or experience that you'd like to share, I'd love to hear it. Put it in the comments below. And if you took something from this video, then please subscribe. And if you didn't take something from this video and you're still watching at this point, then that's a sign. Please also subscribe. I'm Average Dom Slim. Do the right thing and drink your milk.